you for strength, you poison the fire. We ask you for patience, you pound us in your forge, you baptize with your spirit. Our tension strength goes high, we come forth with fruit from the forge.
Well, good morning. Welcome to The Forge. Glad you could join us this morning for another edition of The Forge. With me today in the studio, I have Randy and Gary. So thanks for joining me, guys.
Our good pleasure.
Okay. Well, mine too.
Maybe.
we'll see, right? And Randy says that because today our topic is a tough topic, but one that we need to talk about and address. So the topic today on The Forge is grief. You've gone through the theme song of The Forge, that God puts us through the forge, that He hammers us in the forge and shapes us. And probably no greater hurt and hammering that God does is forging us through grief. So we want to talk about that today. And today, obviously both of you are here. You lost your wives, and that has really thrown life who knows where.
Oh yeah.
So let's just talk about that a little bit, and let's begin by talking about how grief has affected you. Whoever wants to start. How has grief affected you?
Oh, in a myriad of ways. At least of which is the sense of loss. It's opened me up to the possibilities of life after. It is something that is continuing and will continue from here on out. There will be no end to my grief.
Right.
Because that isn't how it works for me. I guess all of this is from my perspective. Right?
Sure.
It's not everybody's probably, but grief is like the price you pay for love.
That is a statement.
I've had, grief before. I remember back to 1975 when Kathy's younger sister died at 24, suddenly, without warning. That was probably the most intense grief as a young person that I experienced. Of course, grief of parents. My mother died at 80, which I thought was too young. But death of parents is the natural progression of life. So it's, while grief-filled, there's a certain order to it.
Sure.
So that,
It's an expected thing. So
yes.
It fits with your worldview.
Yes. And then, to have Kathy diagnosed with ALS, that's where my grief began.
Yes.
Because there was no way out. there was, short of a miracle, there would be no recovery. And so it was, like Gary with Marilyn and cancer, that's when the grief begins.
Yeah.
The journey was slow and methodical. I remember you and Val coming to pray with us at our house after we had the diagnosis. That was very meaningful. and sad. You know, so what was the question?
Well, just how
I start to ramble.
Yeah. Well, it was just how grief affects us, and I think you've shown that. Maybe Gary, you want to jump in and.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Marilyn passed away 2 years and 8 months ago, roughly. And she died of a renal cancer, carcinoma. And she never realized she even had that to begin with, but it was a steady downhill over probably a year and a half until she finally passed. And she was in hospice, and her time, well, she did really well with her time, I think, that she had. She spent the last part of it being unable to talk, though, and it was at home under hospice. And I feel like after she passed, grief came on to me rather slowly, and as it progressed, it got more pronounced in the fact that I would go to her picture, for instance, and I would say, "Why aren't you here? Why aren't you here?" And grief in general has a variety of feelings to it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's stronger than others. And when it's strong, it's very strong. And so, sometimes you wind up listening to a particular piece of music or seeing something that triggers a memory, and all of a sudden you've got tears.
Yeah.
And as I've gone through this grief so far, it's come to me in waves. And it just seems like if I keep myself active, it doesn't come on me as fast. But if I'm out and I could be driving to church, and all of a sudden, and I've done this, all of a sudden the tears come.
Yeah.
That's grief. That's, and we'll never be over it. But
you both said that, and I want to speak to that a little bit, or have you speak to a little bit, because you hear some people say, "Well, you'll get over it." What do you? Where's that? I don't even know where that's coming from, because you never get over it.
no,
It's, I think it's coming from our culture. It's kind of there's a defined period, and then you should be over it. So,
Are they saying something different when they say you're over it? I mean, are they saying you're over the initial stage? Or?
I would say that it's for the person's comfort, and not for yours.
Right. Oh, okay.
You should be over it. Well, you never get over it. It's just a fact. I mean, what was her name? Kubler-Ross, who had the steps of grieving.
Yes.
Well, that was all well and good, and those are steps of grieving. They are not in that order. They are not in that timeline. They come and they go,
Right. Right.
All one after the other, some at the same time. But there is no lineal.
Right. And
thing
every
at all.
person's different, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. Because you made a comment, and I wish I had written it down. I didn't have a pen to write it down, but grief is a result of something about the intensity of our love. Something. Do you remember?
Yes.
Say that again. If you can. In a different phrase, maybe.
Yes. Well, I mean, grief is the cost of love.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
It's, how can you have grief if you haven't loved?
Right.
I mean, who would care?
Right. Right.
So, my ultimate grief is the loss of Kathy,
Sure.
And, one wants to have the Lord as, uppermost.
Right. Right.
Well, Kathy was my uppermost. I hadn't reached that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lifetime together is, there's a lot of effort. There were some touchy times, when should we continue on this path? And,
Right. Sure.
the life is life and all that entails. And so, to share those years, who are you closest to?
Right.
And then they're gone, and I don't know. It's I don't know. It's just
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit. You have a certain world, and the world works a certain way. You and Marilyn had your world. It works a certain way. How did that? What did diagnosis to both Marilyn and Kathy? What did that diagnosis begin to do to your world, and how does that all play out?
I'll have to go back to the time before her passing, of course, and not treat, well, she was trying to find out what was wrong. And she was anemic, and she was tired all the time. And I can remember one time of a church when we had a game session, and she said, I have to go home. She was so tired, and so she left. She was able to drive, but she left, and I got a ride home after that. But this was an indication that something more serious than just being tired.
Yeah.
And so the kids and I, my 4 boys and their wives, met together at St. Joseph's Hospital. We had a meeting with a heart surgeon, and he apparently had, from the primary care physician, had obtained an order. You better look at this. And he did, and he found that the renal artery was blocked. And so he told us, gave us, now you picture the boys, their wives, myself, in this room, about the size of this room, and they were there, and he was going over all of the
labs.
yeah, the labs, but
The options for treatment or whatever?
well, that's next.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I can't, the pictures that he had
Okay.
of it.
Okay.
And he said, well, I can't give you a great deal of hope. Being 81 years old, she stands a good chance of not surviving the surgery. And if she does, I don't know what it would look like after that, is what he said.
Being honest.
Pardon?
Being honest.
Yeah, he was honest.
That's
He
good.
was honest. The doctor that dealt with the kidney part of this thing had something else going on at that time, and he couldn't be present at this. So, but I guess they both concurred. Well, anyway, to make a very long story short, my son, one of my sons, and I won't say who, asked the question, if this were your mother, he asked the doctor, if this were your mother, would you say have the surgery? And the doctor kind of looked down at the table and back up. He said, no. And that made Marilyn's decision right there, that she was not going to have any operation.
Right.
And so we went from there to hospice and the result. So,
Yeah, the strength. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah,
Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, she was very brave about this, and whatever it will be, will be. So,
Yeah, these women, I tell you, they're just so strong. You know,
yeah.
when Kathy was diagnosed, you know, there'd been some slurring of speech, and you know, there was, you know, what's going on. And so we went into the doctor, and she looked her over, and she'd had some blood work, and so the doctor said, well, we're gonna oh no, then she ordered the blood work and said, well, do you want my opinion now or wait till the tests come back? I said, hey, I don't, you know, let's wait until, you know,
Sure.
let's be positive. I don't want your opinion.
Right.
You know? And so after that blood work and other tests, we came back, and it was a beautiful sunny October day in Gig Harbor. We pull into the parking lot, and we said a prayer, and I'm going, come on, God, give me this one today.
Right.
You know, just give this one to me. And we went in, and, you know, she said, yeah, she's got ALS, and, you know, it could be, you know, average is 2 to 5 years. She had bulbar, which is up here as opposed to the extremities, and so that's a little shorter, and you know, it just crushed me, and you know, she hands me a box of Kleenex, and I'm bawling into tissue, and Kathy's like patting my knee. Oh, who's the guy here?
Yeah. Right.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
And you know, so she survived 18 months, and it was a blessing that, you know, she was ambulatory for that whole time until the last week or so, and so I look back on the blessings that God gave us in spite of this most horrendous thing I could ever imagine. You know, that God brought us through. I mean, you know, but her presence was, you know, I look back and I lament, you know, we should have talked more. I can't quite remember. You know, bring me back there so that I can,
Right.
you know, learn more and talk more, and you know, and then there, you know, like Marilyn became, you know, the last, I don't know, several months she couldn't talk or couldn't write anymore. So
Studies have been done that in the brain that when news like that hits, you get the diagnosis, you begin processing it, that the brain responds to that grief the same way it does if you were to cut your hand or break your leg or knock your shin against something. It's a pain response. Is that what you felt? I mean, grief in the brain is the same kind of pain response, or very similar to whacking your shin against it. I think
It was much deeper.
there was yeah.
Well, emotionally it does, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant, emotionally.
Yeah. But it's a pain, isn't it? It's
Yes, I would say yes.
Yeah.
For me, it was painful.
yes.
Not painful like hitting yourself, but this painful that was much deeper
Right.
and less hopeful.
Sure.
You know,
Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
This pain of there's no hope.
Yeah.
You know. And then I found hope in the Lord because God helped me through it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm convinced that, you know, Kathy had this most intimate relationship that 18 months
Mm.
that she was dying,
Yeah.
that I couldn't not compete with, but realize or be part of,
Right.
you
Right.
know, because I'm the one being left behind
Right.
and she's the one living it and dying it. And,
Right.
you know, I look back and wonder
Mm.
where was her head?
Mm. You could only observe
Yeah,
from outside. You couldn't enter into that.
that particular
Yeah. Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The emotional pain that I experience all the time. If I go over to, she was cremated and I have her urn.
Mhm.
And I always make it a practice of going over in the morning and saying, I love you. And then later on in the morning, I'll come back with a memory in my mind that I've remembered,
Yeah.
and which is hard sometimes with it. You know, I'm 86. But anyway,
Oh, you're saying
You're a
memory
spring
card.
chicken.
anyway, it's a little hard for me to remember those things. But and then in the evening, same thing. But sometimes I go over there. Why did you have to die? You know, it's almost anger. Anger is another thing that you feel.
It's a big part of grief.
How can you be angry at a dead individual?
Right. Right. Is that one of the surprises of grief? I mean, grief tends to surprise us in many different ways. Is that one of them, perhaps? Were there other surprises?
The shift in the steps of grief.
Mm.
How, you know, one will be there and then there'll be another one.
Right.
And, you know, surprises.
You have some.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say it's as far as surprises go, I can't come up with anything right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just say this, that I have two grief counselors.
Mm-hmm.
I have Brenda,
Yeah.
and then I have Barbara down at Providence Healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
or Grief Share.
Mm-hmm.
And I meet with both of them twice a month.
Mm-hmm.
And Randy meets with
Yeah, Bob, yeah.
Brenda.
Yep, yep.
And I can say that maybe the surprises are not there because they bring out the thoughts that you have that might be surprises.
Sure.
See, I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah.
But I thank the Lord for both of them
Mm-hmm.
being there.
Yes.
And my kids too. I mean, they pay attention to me more than they ever have. You know, want to make sure you're okay.
You're all of a sudden very important.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask perhaps the last question for our episode this morning. But you both mentioned your relationship with God. How does grief, especially the onset of it, the surprise of it, the here it is, all of a sudden my world has changed. How has that impacted, or how did it impact your relationship with Christ?
I was laid bare with that news, and for the next 18 months, you know, as like I had never been. All right. You know, Kathy and I have been growing in the Lord had been for 50 years. That news, it brought a closeness that I hadn't experienced before. I mean, I'm crying out to the Lord.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I need you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not like I haven't always needed you, but this is a whole different ball game. You know?
Right.
And you know, we for years now, the mornings we'd sit on the couch and read the Daily Bread. And so as she progressed in her disease, you know, then she couldn't read anymore. So I did all the reading, but we continued to do it, and it was just awesome. That was a great comfort, and I think probably God had created that long before. You know, I'll get these two reading, you know, our daily bread, you know, and this is going to come in handy.
Right.
And,
There's a foundation.
Yeah, exactly, and that, you know, that helped tremendously.
Yeah.
You know, just the presence, the Lord's presence, I don't know, just got more. You know.
Yeah. You leaned more upon Him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I am open.
Yeah. Right. Here I am.
Here I am.
Nothing on my own. Right.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. And then when she passed, you know, He gave me the honor of being there, present with her, to witness that transition. That, and I've mentioned this to you before.
Yeah.
Wow. What a moving honor that was, to be at that thin veil.
Yeah.
So thin, I could almost stepped over. It was, I don't know, unbelievable. So I thank God for that.
Yeah. Going back to those, well, first of all, the day she passed, I had just returned, and you probably remember this, Pastor. I had just returned from church, and was taking care of things. The kids were in the house. They were there. They were their wives, and I don't remember what we had going that day, or supposedly had going. And about 2 o'clock, a little before 2, really, I got one of those milkshake things. I can't remember what the brand name is.
But like a Boost type thing.
Yeah, Boost. Yeah. High protein. And we're just going to see if Marilyn wanted that. And so I walked over, and I looked at her, and she kind of went forward a little bit, looked up at the ceiling and then settled back down, and that was it. She'd passed away. And with no sounds at all, and I looked at the kids and I said, I think she passed. And we felt her pulse, no pulse. And I think it was shortly after that you came with Val. It kind of got jumbled up then.
Sure, yeah.
And I did some calling, and they told me what to do. But I kind of veered off of what you asked, but
I don't think
There's
you
no
did.
veering off.
yeah, I do. I want to add this, that I don't know how soon it was after she had passed, whether it was a day or just an hour, or no, it couldn't have been an hour. But anyway, soon after she passed, I sat down and I began to think, hey, Gary, you need to make some plans to go on with this. And so I wrote down 9 different things, and I won't go over them here, but 2 of them were keep Marilyn's memory alive. And the first one was walk closer to the Lord, or improve it,
Right. Yeah.
which is the same thing, I guess. But
There's that 86-year-old wisdom.
yeah, well, I'm trying to follow those things, you know.
Very good. Yeah.
Financial and the house and
Yeah.
my dog.
Well, we're gonna wrap this session up, but before we do, or as we do, I guess, regarding the onset of grief and how that affects you and whatnot, is there anything that you would like to say to folks, to help folks as they perhaps don't know they're gonna? I mean, we don't know. I mean, tomorrow I could be plunged into grief. Is there anything that you want to say that? That was helpful to you, could be helpful to others? I don't know. Just any last words for this episode?
I would say be bold in your grief. There will be people who say, aren't you over it yet? Or, I'm not afraid to bring Kathy up. I'm not afraid to share my grief because that's my mourning, Grief is what goes on inside your head. The mourning is the external of it. So I'm happy to mourn. If somebody thinks I'm weird, that's okay. So you won't know until you're hit with it. But embrace it, or it will fester and make you really ill. You won't be happy.
Those are good words.
Get out there and go to groups, ask for help. You can find people, and so now I can't grieve for people who I barely know, but I can be a thoughtful, caring person, more than I could before this all happened. I have that capability of, just sitting with someone in their grief. You don't have to make it better, or say some wise words, because it's just being present.
Thank you. Gary?
I would say try to stay strong. And it's hard at the beginning, but you get stronger, and the grief doesn't take a back seat, but it's easier to handle. And if you think of it as a growing and a growing in strength. So,
Just a quick clarification, when you say stay strong, what do you mean by that?
by what? I'm sorry.
Stay strong. And Randy was nodding with that. What do you mean when you say stay
Staying
strong?
God will
You're-
give you the strength.
Okay, you're not talking go to the gym and work out.
No,
You're
I wasn't.
no.
Have the courage to face your grief and have the honesty to face your grief
Yeah.
and face it with a loving heart because you have lost someone you love, but you still love them. I do anyway.
Well, it doesn't change.
I tell her that every morning. And that's
Can I read
my
one thing?
idea of
sorry.
strength. Go ahead.
That's helpful. Thank you, Gary. Yeah, go ahead.
This is 2 Corinthians 1:3. The God of all comfort. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves have received from God. For just as the sufferings of Christ flow over into our lives, so also through Christ our comfort overflows. You know, I think I can give comfort
Yeah.
to those who are suffering grief. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We're gonna talk about this in the next episode, and you know what? That's a good place to start with. Maybe we'll start with 1 Corinthians. Folks, thanks for joining us. Our next episode we'll talk more on grief. I hope this has been helpful to you. And if you are grieving, or the time comes when you will be grieving, I hope these words will be an encouragement to you, a comfort to you, and that you will find folks to help you, and that you will know that God is there for you and wants to help you. So thanks again for watching.
We ask you for strength, you push in the fire. We ask you for patience, you pound sing for you, baptize with your spirit. Our tension strength goes high. We come forth with fruit from the floor.